which means they are open. And actually, the only proselytization that can take place in the schools, it can't be Islam, it can't be other things, it can only be Christianity. Now, let's see if I can look this way and point this thing this way.
Is he pointing it right?
Yeah, it's funny. It's moving up here. It's just not changing up there. Let me go back and let me get some things up again. I think so much time has gone by since I started. Let me restart it, Benedict.
Okay.
And I think it'll.
What's the next picture?
Okay, try to advance it now. Try to see if it'll advance now.
There we go.
Oh, go back. There you go.
Okay. So, anyway, in 2006, we acquired 230 acres. Now, this is what's called the Great North Road. Cecil Rhodes, who was a great empire builder for the British Empire, his intention was to have the entire continent of Africa under the rule of the British Empire. And so he envisioned a road from Cape Town to Cairo. And so this goes right by our property. And so anyway, the way we've been led is to take advantage of the road front. And so we have a restaurant and we have what is a truck stop now. Because we don't serve beer, there are no prostitutes, and consequently we get drivers who really want a peaceful situation, a peaceful night. They don't want loud music, they want to be able to sleep, so we've got a couple guards, and that's one income generating activity that we have. This is the area where we're establishing teacher housing. This is an old satellite picture, so it doesn't have the whole school. This is where the school is. And this road from the Great North Road, this is our farm road that goes up to our children's village, which is 20 acres fenced off up here. This is a 3/4 mile road. And we purposely built the school a good distance from the village because the main mode of transportation in Africa is walking. And so we wanted our kids to be able to walk in the rain, to be able to walk in the heat. They don't have to walk in the snow. That's one thing. Basic facts. Total acreage, 230 acres. We built 35 buildings. We make our own construction blocks. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to afford to do what we've done. The village is 20 acres and 14 buildings within the village itself, which was the area that I showed you. It's fenced off. The school, 13 classrooms and a dining hall. The businesses, restaurant, takeaway, and truck stop, equipment rental. We rent out our tractor. We have this wonderful guy, Uncle Wayne. How many of you ever drunk V8 juice? All the carrots in V8 juice are harvested with his super fast harvesters. And he loves equipment, and he brought a backhoe over and tractor and other stuff. So we rent those out, and they help cover the payroll. Clothing boutique and bookstore, and then various agricultural products, chickens at times, eggs at times, corn at times. And staff housing outside the village, currently 8 housing units and 15 more are under construction. In the last 2 years in the village, we took 14 new children, 12 in the last 6 months. 2 new houses have opened. A morning preschool for our preschoolers started. How many of you are familiar with the Alpha course?
They do it here.
Huh?
They do it here.
Yeah. So anyway, we just a couple of months ago finished the Alpha course, and then we've got it's a 10-week program, and we had 106 teenagers, mostly from the surrounding bush, coming. So that was kind of exciting. Our children are having jobs. We have a doctor living in the village, Dr. Chipepo Chibesakunda, who's a physician. Now, one question, where do the children come from? The children come from different situations and circumstances, but almost all of them are situations of extreme poverty. This is what you see in our area, mud huts with thatched roofs. In the rainy season, sometimes the huts collapse because they're made of mud. Sometimes the roofs catch on fire. And there's certainly no electricity or running water in these places. You see people carrying wood great distances, often carrying buckets of water on their heads. And the wood is for cooking and for heating. So it's a situation, this little girl's face really kind of reflects it, extreme poverty and hopelessness. We have a friend who does a lot of work in Africa, and he says that there's an underlying fatalism throughout the continent, the opposite of hope. An assumption, it was bad, it is bad, it will be bad. So I'm really glad the Lord gave us the name, the Village of Hope, the School of Hope, because hope is such a critical part of what's needed. Where do the kids come from? Believe it or not, maximum security women's prison. A couple of the kids pressed the wrong button. Oh. Okay. Now, this is interesting. This is in the maximum security women's prison. It's 4 big high walls, and there are 3 rooms along the edge of the walls that the women stay in, and wall-to-wall mats on the floor. Now, if a woman goes to prison and her family, extended family, is not willing to take the children, which often happens because the woman has shamed the family, so they feel stigmatized, the children then have to go to prison with the mother.
Wow.
The other thing might be that they're still nursing, or if they're pregnant, then they go and they have a baby at the prison. We were there one day when one of the inmates had just had a baby there.
And in the middle of the courtyard, the walls, there is a single tree, and these are a couple of the little kids who were living in the prison. Well, we have a very good relationship with the government, and they approached us, the prison service, in January 2013, they had come to us and said, we have 7 kids, would you be willing to take them? These were somewhat older kids whose moms are in prison for a very, very long time. And they were in kind of a halfway house situation that turned out to be very bad. So they asked if we would take them. We said, yeah, we'll take them. We prayed first. You know, you pray for about 5 minutes, and it's like, how can we say no? Of course, depending on the situation. But so anyway, we took the kids, and that worked out very well. So then in 2014, they came and said, here, we have a 2-year-old and 3 3-year-olds. Will you guys take them? This is an aerial view of the prison. It looks like one of those bombing photographs. But these are the 4 walls that I mentioned. And then these 3 rooms, buildings, are where the wall-to-wall mats are on the floor. And this is the tree in the middle that you saw. And then this is the offices for the prison officials.
So they're out in the whole courtyard during the day, but at 4 in the afternoon, everybody's got to go in there and they're locked in. Kids, babies, ladies.
Yeah, and as they said to us, we have nothing for the kids. There's not adequate food for them. There are no toys for them. There's nothing that's appropriate for children in this setting. So anyway, these are the little felons that we broke out of prison, these 4 right here. 2 years old, 3, 3, and 3. And one of the kids in local language after they got there wanted to know, was I the warden?
What'd you tell
Kind of. I don't speak local language, but our kids, you know. So anyway, I mean, how cute can you get, really? And we'll tell the story of this little guy in a minute. Okay, now, in 2013, January, one of the kids who the prison services sent to us was around 11 then, 10 or 11, and her name is Gift, which is a common name over there. And Gift is a little intercessor. She is a prayer. And everybody in her house, for those of you that don't know, our setup is that we have separate family-style houses, 2 bedrooms for kids, 1 bedroom for a Zambian house mother. And she would every day have the house praying for the women in prison, because this was the biggest thing in her life. And her mother was in prison, sentenced total of 30 years. She'd served 10 at this point in 2013.
Her sister lives in our village and was actually born in prison.
So, in December, Christmas rolls around, December 2013, the president of the country decided to pardon 1 woman
In the whole country.
in the whole country. Their mother.
Wow, praise God.
Gift and Memory's mom. Amazing. I mean, just amazing. So that was such an encouragement for everybody, because everybody had been praying for this woman who had another 20 years to go. And the first thing she did was come to the village to see her kids. So that really spoke strongly to me of this mother's, love. Now, somebody asks us, well, then did the kids go with the mother? The answer is no. I mean, all the kids that come to us are under magistrate's orders, placement orders by the government. We don't just, take kids at the gate or something like that, though people have tried to bring kids to the gate. But the mothers know the kids are in a really good place, that they're getting a high-quality education. Consequently, they really don't, and their lives aren't settled, so they don't.
You're going to tell them about this year?
Yeah, okay. Why don't you tell them about this year?
So anyway, so now comes Christmas 2014. So we had a big day, we passed out gift bags to everybody, we had a party in the afternoon, Benedict and I are getting ready for bed, we get a phone call from the roadside, from the guard, who says there are 2 women here that want to see their children. So he gets in the car, he goes down. Well, it's Judy and Obed's mothers, who had been called into the prison office at 2 in the afternoon on Christmas Day and said, pack your things, you are pardoned.
Wow.
So now these 2 moms show up, and the kids are watching a movie in one of the houses. I mean, there was rejoicing, and they were all excited. The women actually were sisters. I didn't realize the 2 were cousins. And so we had a house that didn't have anybody staying in it at the time. We put them up for the night, and that was the first thing they did, was to leave their meager belongings at the prison until they could come and see their kids. So that was just an amazing thing, 2 years running. And then to just show you how interesting, that was the Christmas that just kept on giving. So we get that all taken care of. We go home. Now we're getting ready for bed again. The phone rings.
It's 10 o'clock, and we're really ready to go to sleep because our bedtime is usually 8:30. And anyway, the guard calls down at the restaurant, Uncle Ben, there's a guy here who's very, very sick, a truck driver. He's had a high fever and been throwing up all day. Now this is December, okay? What was the big news headline in December? The E word? Yeah. And these truck drivers, I mean, they drive across the continent of Africa, so I'm thinking, oh man. Okay, now I've got to take this guy to the hospital, but I really don't want him in the car with me. Okay, because even though they say no, transmission is strictly by bodily fluids, blah, 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 I don't want to take a chance. So, anyway, the idea came, well, we have an open back 3-ton truck, okay? So I drove down to the restaurant in the truck and I said, you are our esteemed friend and customer, and I don't want to be offensive, but let me just ask, you know, with this Ebola stuff going around and everything, would it be okay if I took you to the hospital and I put some blankets or something in the back and you sat in the back? And he said, no problem. So anyway, so he got in the back of the truck, took him to the hospital. It was a very serious case of malaria, but to show you the medical system there, they didn't have any malaria meds. So we had malaria meds, so I had to go back and give him malaria meds. But that's just kind of, anyway, so that was Christmas night. and so I get home, I don't know what time it was, and Kathleen says, turn your phone off. Okay, where do the kids come from? Look at this. This is a housing situation, okay? And Granny and Natasha live there, deep in the bush. Granny, I love this lady. I don't understand the word, and she doesn't understand the word I say, but Granny just has this sweet personality, and she's terrific. Anyway, when Natasha was born, her mother died. Her mother died in childbirth. So Granny the mother had a 4-year-old, Namakow, and Granny felt she couldn't take care of both Namakow and Natasha. So she put Namakow in an orphanage at 4. And as the years went by, Natasha, as is the custom, was taking care of Granny. Well, anyway, Natasha completed grade 7 in a government school somewhere. And, you know, she walked to school every day. And we kind of went and met with the family and said, you guys really need to find somebody to take care of Granny because Natasha should be going to school. Don't let it just stop at grade 7. And so Granny agreed totally. And so anyway, so she ended up coming to the village of Hope. And this is her sister Namakow, who's at the village now. Because that other orphanage where she'd been placed when she was 4 ended up closing. It's amazing how many orphanages end up closing. It's kind of tragic. So anyway, so they're both at the village now, and that's really good. Now, this is wild. One night we get a call from our guard at the restaurant, and he says, you're not going to believe what I found. Now we have what's called elephant grass. It grows up 6 feet tall. Guess what I found in the grass? What? 3 kids. What? So anyway, these 3 had walked 15 miles, and he found them at 9:30 at night, and they were carrying heavy bags of nothing that was worth keeping, but they were running away from a terribly abusive situation. And so we worked closely with social welfare. We got in touch with social welfare the next day, and the social welfare protective services worker that we work with came out, and we went and got the parents, because we had heard everything. You hear everything, even though it's 15 miles away. There's a thing called the Bush Telegraph, and maybe it's the Bush Internet now, but everybody knows everything almost instantly. So anyway, we went into the bush, which was quite a ways back, and every time I am told, it's not far, it's close, I've learned my Zambian brothers don't really have the same gauge of distance that I do. And well, is the road okay? Oh, yeah. Uncle Ben, the road's fine. It ain't a road. So, you know, cars go down quickly. Well, anyway, so we got the parents and brought them and had a meeting. It was a Friday. We had a meeting with the social worker.
This was after they had gone into the village to see the kids. Now the little one hid behind one of the house mother's skirts. And the boy went way around so he didn't have to come near the dad. Which said a lot to us, because that is like super, super rude in that culture. Kids are not to behave that way to parents. So that told us something right there, that they would act like that.
So anyway, the father admitted, he said, yes, I guess I beat them too much. And then the social worker said, well, we really would like the kids to stay here at the Village of Hope. And he said, no, it's not possible because I rent this one out. And I rent him out as a laborer to farmers. Take care of cattle, take care of goats. So the social worker said, well, representing the government, I'm saying these kids will stay here over the weekend. You go talk to your senior head man in your village. Now the setup there is you have chiefs, and then you have head men and head women who are in charge of the villages that are usually of the chief's family. So the social worker said, Mr. Masunda said, I want you to go talk to your head man and see what he says. So the social worker, the parents, and our operations manager, Chembo, got into a car and drove them to go back to their village. On the way, there was an old woman hitchhiking. This is the way you do it there. You don't do this. You do like this, asking somebody to stop. So they stopped and pulled over. She got in the car. It was the senior head man's wife from their village. Okay? And she said, did you find your children? And they said, yes. And she said, well, where are they? And they said, at the Village of Hope. And she said, that's where they belong. So then our operations manager, who's very savvy and doesn't want to leave a stone unturned, said, yeah, but he doesn't want them to go. He said they can't stay there. He doesn't want them at the Village of Hope.
And she said, well, if you don't take your kids, I've got some I'm taking care of. I'll take them.
So the guy immediately said, no, 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 no. I wasn't saying that. I wasn't meaning that. They can stay there. So anyway, so the kids...
He changed his mind.
Yeah, he changed his mind because authority was there. So anyway, those kids are now very happily at the village and going to school. Okay, you want to...
Yeah, there was a teacher at another school, like an assistant principal, and for a couple of years, I think, she's been saying, there's a family, you need to help them. Can you help them? And, you know, I mean, we were kind of full of kids, and so I didn't take it very seriously. And then one day she showed up at school with the oldest boy, so I said, okay. And we sent the doctor to go evaluate the situation, and she came back in tears. And she said, it's a terrible, terrible situation. She said, actually, the kids at the prison have it better than these kids. Their mother is developmentally and physically disabled. Probably these 3 children are the result of different men having their way with her. And so there were 16 people living in a 2-room house. Her parents and her sisters, and they treat her like dirt. Well, the doctor said they treat her like a dog. She does all the work around. And these kids, everybody else has some kind of mat. These kids were just sleeping on the floor. So the doctor says we have to take them. So they've come to live
in the village. And Mary was so happy when she got her first pair of shoes.
And they were coming to school. They came to school before they actually moved in the village, and none of them had shoes. They were coming barefoot, so we had to get them shoes.
Now, these 3, Paul and Precious are brother and sister. Prudence, this was about 5 years ago, so this is a more current picture. This picture's current, so imagine them 5 years previous. So Prudence's mom died, and she went to live with her cousins, Paul and Precious, and their mother. Now this happens too often over there. Then their mother died, and there wasn't anybody else. So when we got them, they were living in a cattle shed. And a cattle shed there is not a cattle shed here, you know. So just like Jesus was born in a manger, and where cattle were stabled, that's where they were living. This thing's now liable to zoom ahead.
Yeah, it's doing that thing again. It's advancing up here, it's just not advancing down there. Let me see if I can get you back in the sync.
They're great kids. In fact, we have what's called a tuck shop, which is a school store in our school. And sell lots of different things: rulers, pencils, erasers, cookies, which they call biscuits over there, and things like that.
Run the next one.
Huh?
Run the next.
Okay. And Prudence is, she and a young guy named Roman take care of the store. They're in charge of the inventory, ordering what they need, counting the cash, all that kind of stuff. It's terrific. Okay, so the king said, I'll tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it for me. And we focus on housing, feeding, clothing, healthcare, education, discipleship. Our children are joyful, eager to learn. Now the thing to remember is most of these kids were caregivers for their dying parents. They were involved in that kind of care. So the Lord does an awful lot of healing. And you know, I said that, you know, their metrics are big these days. You know, everything you have to have metrics to measure the progress, and I call this the smile metric.
Okay, so this is fun. This is gift several years ago. Gift now.
Wow.
Gifted.
Praise God.
This is Exilda, his twin sister then and now.
Oops.
Oops, this is John, who was taking care of goats and not allowed to go to school. And this is John now. This is Docklin, who was the baby for a long time. And this is her now.
That was her now.
Yeah, that was her now.
She's growing fast.
And so the kids next to their houses, they're encouraged to have beautiful gardens for vegetable, and they also put flowers there as well. This is a typical bedroom, and we have a carpenter on staff, and he makes the beds.
Now, this is something we hadn't thought about. Our kids, I mean, like right now, we're doing 15 apartments for teachers and other needs. And our kids always see Zambian men working, producing tables, doing the welding for security bars, farming the fields, taking care of the animals, you know, and that's their image of a Zambian man. The kids that live in the rural villages, only 13% of the working population are on a payroll. So everybody else is struggling piecemeal to live. So there's a lot of hopelessness, and their image of Zambian man is a guy staggering out of the tavern. And so our kids are getting a whole different perspective of who they're meant to be. We have 25 dairy cattle, Jersey cattle, and the kids take care of those. Then I have a great appreciation for the pioneers, because when we got to 230 acres, it was not cleared. So we have about 40 acres cleared now for agriculture, 20 acres for the children's village, and we had to begin all that essentially by hand, using axes. And all of you who know how hands-on I am can just envision me out there with an axe cutting down these trees and with a big shovel, anyway, talking about digging. So we had to burn the stumps, stump the fields, and like I say, I had a great appreciation for Kansas in the 1800s. So anyway, you also have to drill your wells to get water. We have 8 wells on the property for both domestic use and for irrigation. Now, you may wonder what this is. We don't have stoves in the houses. We're raising kids not to be North American hybrids. We're raising them to be Zambian kids. In Zambia, you cook with wood or you cook with charcoal. So as we clear land, as we clear the trees off, we make as much charcoal as we can to save us money from having to buy it. So this is production of charcoal. You pile the wood in, you cover it with dirt, you make little air holes, you set it smoldering, and a guy has to watch it for a week, pretty much day and night, as it slowly smolders, because if it burns, you just have ash, you don't have actual charcoal. And that saves a lot of money, because we go through a lot of charcoal. Okay, our businesses exist to provide funds for all the operations. Last year, our businesses and our school fees brought in $295,000 US, which is a huge praise, especially in the middle of the Zambian rural area. That covered about 62% of our operating expenses. Now, the businesses exist to generate funds, but also as training sites for the children and students. I was sitting on the banks of the Zambezi River at Children of Zion Village many years ago, and I was listening to the kids play, and I felt the Lord say, make every provision for them as for your own. And just like an epiphany, it just burst in my mind. I used to have a computer software business, and all my kids had worked in the computer software business. Kathleen and Janice and their friend Sandy had Joyful Sound School of Music, and all of our kids had worked there. And it was just a sudden awareness that kids learn about the world of work by listening to their families, by listening to their parents complain at night or give occasional positive joys or what. But orphans don't have that opportunity because they don't have parents who are working, especially in a country even, where only 13% are on payrolls. So we knew we had to create, I knew that the next version would have to include businesses for the kids to grow up being familiar with the businesses. And so it's training sites for the children and students, and it's job sites. So we've got the restaurant, takeaway, truck stop, tailor shop, 400 school uniforms. We have 410 kids in the school. The kids have uniforms, so our kids have learned how to do tailoring and make the uniforms. Poultry operation, equipment rental, agriculture, boutique, and bookstore. This is our restaurant, and it's kind of pretty traditional architecture there. You've got a veranda, iron sheets they call them, we call it a tin roof, and yeah. We build all of our own buildings. So we get, every night we'll have anywhere from, the lowest number will be 15, the highest number has been as high as 52 or 53 trucks that pay to park there. So I say the ground right there is the most profitable part of our operation because it just stays there and then people pay to spend the night on it. And then we have hot showers, and typically the guys will buy meals. So that's really one of our biggest income generators. And the road, the Great North Road is right there, running right there. Okay, this is the mini mart that we have so that the guys can, buy things that they need while they're on the road. We have a big screen TV for them to watch what they call football. We call it soccer. Okay, so initially when we first started, everything was being done by hand with hose. Hose there weigh about 8 pounds. They're not like our little garden hose. Our little garden hose would not make it there for very long. These are big heavy steel things, big handles. And we used to plant 10 acres with hose and weeding it the same. And then Uncle Wayne took pity on us. He has the fastest carrot and pickle harvesters in the world. And so he loves equipment, so he sent a disc over, and he sent minimal tillage plows and planters and all kinds of stuff. And that's the tractor he sent over, so we are grateful for Uncle Wayne. Okay, education. Critical. In that part of the world, education is really a deal breaker, make or break. It's a deal maker or a deal breaker. If you don't have education, it's almost inevitable you stay in abject poverty. At least you have some chance if you have education. So we started a school, high quality Christian education. How many of you are familiar with the 7 habits of highly successful people? Huh?
Highly effective people.
Highly effective people. Stephen Covey. We teach that from grade 1 up.
Want me to take over?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so you can see from here we've had significant growth every year. We started as a school just for the kids in the village, and then our employees were saying, well, these kids are getting a better education than our kids, can we send them? So we said yes, so we had a big spike. And then we decided we were going to go to grade 12 and we would need more students to also help in terms of paying teachers in all the different subjects. So we opened it to the community, and so now, as the school year starts in January, we are at 410 students.
Last January.
Yeah, so we have joyful students. They don't like the holiday months of April, August, and December, and they don't like Thursdays because they're half days. They'd rather be at school. Our teachers are all Zambian trained, and they're learning our new way of doing things. And so I would say that our teachers have become outstanding teachers. Okay, we already did that. And we have daily Bible lessons, prayer, and songs. At the beginning of 2015, this school year, we went from 320 to 410 students. We had to get 7 new teachers, and we have 2 interns. We expect...
So the total number of teachers are about 24.
24. We expanded. We're going to show you a picture of our container classroom. But because we're still short of classrooms, we're having to use the community center and the boutique, which are up at the road front, for grades 6 and 7. We have construction underway for 15 teacher apartments. Over there, if you don't provide housing, you have to pay 30% of the pay in addition for housing. And like I have 2 teachers, one teacher who's riding a bike about 15 miles every day just to get to school. So he's very eager to get one of these apartments. Now, do you have the pointer?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first building for our secondary school. It has 2 classrooms right now. And to your right, that will be where we'll build more classrooms for the secondary.
To their right or to their left?
To their right.
To their right. Okay.
And then
You didn't tell me it was going to be in my cornfield.
yes, well, it's going to be that way. And then we have a dining hall, which really we've used more as a meeting hall than a dining hall right there. We have a container classroom right there. That was before it had been expanded. And then this, the rest of the buildings, that's our primary school.
This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
We have 9
8,
right
9.
now.
Yeah.
9 classrooms plus an office and toilet facilities. Okay, next. So this is the front of the primary school. Again, just more of those blocks. This is us gathered in the courtyard. This was a sports day for the whole school, primary and secondary. So they're not in their uniforms, and there was a teacher in the middle who was doing the morning devotions. Here some of the students are. What I love is that when you go outside a classroom, you go outside. You know, you're not like in a building where you have hallways and you don't ever see the sun. Here are some of the kids eating lunch. We provide lunch 4 days a week. That's okay, don't go back. This is them working on adding a second container. We had one 40-foot container we made a classroom, which was great, but it wasn't really wide enough. It wasn't in very good shape. So we had another container that came in December, and after it was emptied out, we moved it, took out the walls that would be next to each other, and so now we have...
Yeah, so the first container, we had 6 windows and 2 doors in. Since this is construction, it's a guy thing, I'll take it. And so we welded them together, took out the dividing wall, shifted the windows over to here so that we had a double wide instead of 40 feet by 8 feet, 16 feet by 40 feet.
So...
Dave?
Is he there?
Where are we going?
Huh?
I'm trying to find where you want to go. Let's see. Let's go back to here. Yeah, I got to restart it again. So we're on.
But you can't click it down and make it?
No, I'm clicking it right now. It won't.
Okay,
So let me just do this real quick.
Okay, so anyway, we try all different kinds of innovative ways to save money. Typical to build a classroom is $25,000 to $30,000 to build it out of blocks, put in the foundation, your footers, your iron sheets for the roof and all that, okay?
Can you go back one?
This only costs us about $10,000 because containers are pretty expensive there, so you have to buy 2 containers. Here you can buy a container, depending where you are, near Baltimore for about $1,700, $1,800. There, they're about $4,000. But we can
That's the inside. You can
Yeah.
see in some of our secondary students, that's their uniforms. Oh my. So if you look there, you see those tables. We had to have the tables built because we didn't have enough tables. But we're up to grade 11. So we have grade 1 to 11. Next year we'll add grade 12. We try to keep our class size to 25 to 30 in the primary. If it goes over that, we add a helper, or then we get two teachers in as it gets more. I'm constantly turning people away. Oh, just take mine, just one more, please. I said, I've already had 5 one-mores, you know. But we know if we get too big per class, the quality is going to go down. But they're used to about 60 in a class. Most first grade classes in the government schools have 60 students and 1 teacher.
Okay, Dave, can you control it from up there?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go next. So that's the way it looks.
That's
in the
how it
classroom.
looks now. There the
Okay,
guys
next.
are. And then
Okay.
our preschool has started in the village, actually since I've left, because now we have all these cute little ones that need some kind of structure. In the morning, they go to preschool. Can we keep going?
Next.
So there's little Natasha right there.
She was the one you saw in the prison picture at the tree.
Yeah, so it's a cute little thing. Okay, there they are. It's in one of the houses in the village. This is not open to the public. We have enough kids on now our own to deal with.
Next. Okay.
This is Mother Dorothy and Auntie Yvonne, and they are in charge of our preschool.
Next.
Okay, I'll tell this story real fast. Okay, the lady on the left is our doctor, Dr. Chipeppo. The man in kind of behind is my deputy now, our head teacher, our principal. And the other gentleman is a teacher that we hired in January. He had a cousin that he grew up with who was engaged to be married, and the girl got pregnant, had a baby, and he decided to leave. I don't know why. He subsequently went far away in Zambia, married, and had other children. The family, feeling responsibility for this child they knew had been born, looked for her for about 3 years, and they couldn't find her. They thought they knew where she was born. They looked for the mother. They looked for the child. So Teacher Mwewa, the one right in the middle, we hired him. He started in January. He was marking papers for his 8th grade, and he saw this name, Agnes. The girl there, she's actually from our village. And he knew that was the name of the girl they'd been looking for. So he called her in, began to ask her questions.
Her name was the same name as his grandmother.
Right, as the grandmother of the girl that they had been looking for. So this was the meeting that we went to where he went to find out if, in fact, this girl was the one they had been looking for. Actually, her mother is, point to the mother, you can see she's very thin. I thought actually she had almost died a couple of months earlier. Her sister down there is also very, very sick, and the older sister is over there. So it was one of those meetings that I can hardly describe how it was. The 3 sisters were very upset at first and very cautious. They were afraid that the family of the father would take her away, and they didn't want that. So Teacher Maloa, the guy in the back, he really helped and said, listen, this is a God thing. We weren't even going to hire another teacher, but we felt we needed to hire this man. The fact that he even had her, I mean, I don't know all the kids' names. He wouldn't have known all the names of all the kids in the school. So it was kind of a miracle that here he found this girl. And his family will owe money to the mother's family, because over all these years they have done nothing to help support.
So it's a win-win. Agnes gets an extended family, and a mother and aunt who are dying will now have some money coming in. Next.
I'm good next. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, we're restarting. But it's so exciting to see when these miracle things happen, when these God things happen. It's just terrific. Okay, discipleship. We have the Hope Community Church. We did the Alpha Course, daily Bible lesson singing. We have an Aglow Junior chapter, for those of you that know Aglow International. And the kids have done outreach to a leper community that's not very far away. Next. And this is the Hope Community Church. which is the community center, which we also use as a classroom currently in the daytime.
If you notice over there on the far left is Meredith Katsu when she came last summer playing her flute.
And we have 3 music worship teams, and they're all kids. And a number of the kids have started doing the preaching. Next. This was when a team from Colorado was also there. We typically have 80 or so people with a team, a little bit more, and mostly kids. Next. Baptisms. Next. This is a Glow International Youth Group, and that's our sitting room. Next. Now, entrepreneurship and work. We try to encourage entrepreneurship. Nelson, at 15, wrote a book, which should be coming out soon, called My Hope, Reflections on God by a Teen in the African Bush. And a friend of ours visited when he was 11 years old and said to him, what would you like to be when you grow up? He said, I would like to be a physician, possibly a surgeon. The friend of ours who was visiting said, oh, I have a friend in Baltimore who's a very famous surgeon. And Nelson said, would that be Dr. Ben Carson? This kid in the bush. And he said, how did you know? He said, I just finished reading his first book. Next. The tailoring shop, where the kids learn how to make the school uniforms. This is in the kitchen, the commercial kitchen. Shaibu was 15 in that picture. He just turned 16. But they're learning, you know, how to do the businesses. Christopher and Nelson serving the counter at the restaurant. Some of our maize, we serve about 150,000 meals a year. We grow about 40 tons of maize, corn, because the main starch there is a cornmeal. Next. Those aren't our kids. Next. But every morning we have teams of kids that rotate, and at 5 o'clock they get up, milk the cows, and then in the afternoon they also do it. Some of the kids were getting real creative. Once we allowed kids from outside to come to school, some of those kids from outside had money and they could go buy things. And our kids said, we don't have any money. And so some of them got very entrepreneurial and sold their sneakers and sold soccer balls and sold Bibles and sold dictionaries. And we said, oh, this isn't going the way we want it to go. How can we turn this into a positive? So we decided to find small jobs every day for everybody 12 years old and up. So we have 41 kids out of the 65 who live in our children's village. And next, so we had them, forget that for a second. So we gave them jobs. 13 classrooms at the school, clean them after school. Doing the sewing, working in the restaurant, all these different, working in the accounting department, all these different things. And we pay them that at the end of the month they get money, 10% to tithe, 45% to savings, and 45% they can spend. So we're trying to teach them a formula. The kids now who are 16 and older, we're helping them get their national registration cards, putting them on the payroll part-time, helping them get bank accounts since we have a direct deposit payroll system. And that's all part of preparation for adulthood. This shows we construct our own buildings, we make our own blocks. Next. Walls go up quickly this way. We can generally build a building in about 3 months. The ring beam goes around above the windows, raising the rafters. Next. On Thursdays, the kids in grade 10 and 11 go to different vocational sites for half a day. Construction is one of them, auto mechanics is another one, cropping, animal husbandry. Dr. Chipepo teaches professional and medical. Next. Next. So in 2015, the expectation is construction more classrooms, construction more teacher housing, clearing more land for farming. And because of how abysmal the medical care is there in the government system, we have plans underway for a medical clinic at the roadside. and another miracle happened, and we met people when we were out in Minnesota, an organization that said that once we build it, they'll totally equip it.
Amen.
So that's just mind-boggling. And we've had 4 employees' infants in the last 18 months die, and most of it unnecessarily. So anyway, our board of directors over there, you know, is saying this is something that we should do. Next. So more classrooms, we need more. 3 under construction for secondary, 12 more total for secondary, 6 for primary. We need another school bus. We have a school bus that carries 130 kids a day. We have to do 4 trips beginning at 6 o'clock in the morning to get kids to school. 4 morning trips, 4 afternoon trips, so we need another. And they're not the big school buses like this. They're between a van and somewhere between a van and a school bus. It's almost like the handicap vans that you see going around. And they see 24 people, and we have too many kids packed in them. More teacher housing and another house in the village for the village. Our strategic plan calls for 100 kids in the village by 2017. This is Seema's baby. Seema and Whiteson's baby, baby Ben. And we are so happy. Next. Thank you. Next. Thank you, Jesus. Okay.
Yes, we really thank you for coming, but do you all, we've done a lot of talking. Do any of you have questions?